Hey guys, how's it going? I'm back here with another video, and today I decided to bring this video where it's gonna be pretty simple. All I'm gonna go over with is how to create a responsive navbar using React and styled components. So as you can see, this is the navbar that we're gonna be building. It doesn't look the most beautiful thing in the world. The whole point was making it very simple and focusing on building the structure of the navbar using React and styled components. We're going to be dealing with the library a little bit, showing some of the different features you can explore. And overall, it will be a pretty simple but also really nice navbar. You can see that if I inspect element and I turn this into other shapes like this one over here, the links disappear and this button appear. So if you're in your phone or on an iPad or something, the links don't appear anymore. What happens is this button appears, and when you click on it, the links will appear again so that you can click on them. You can close it, and it works on every kind of size. As you can see over here, I'll just slowly push it down, and you see that the button appears. And I really like this kind of navbar. This is still the kind of navbar that I use in every project that I use, and I'm really excited to bring this video for you guys. So if you're interested in seeing the code will be in the description. But with that in mind, let's get into the video. Okay everyone, so as you can see over here, I have this application, very simple, opened up into my VS Code. All I did was created a folder and put it inside of VS Code, and then just ran create React app to generate this application. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to delete some of the stuff that comes with create React app. For example, I'm going to delete the app.test, the index.css, the logo, and the setup tests. I'm deleting those files because they're not very useful for many of the applications that I build, and they just come with create React app because it's a boilerplate. You can make adjustments to it, so these are the adjustments that I want to make. Then I want to delete the import statement for the index.css because we're not going to be using it anymore. And on the app.js, I want to delete this over here and all of this over here as well. So I want to kind of have something wiped clean so that we can start over. The CSS as well, I'll just delete it because remember, we're using styled components, so the main focus will be on writing CSS using the library. So what we want to do initially is the following. We want to start by installing the libraries we're going to be using in our application. So the first library that I want to install is the library React Router DOM, which we will be using to create navigation within routes in our website. I do have a video on the new update they just released, which was the last video I posted. I'll be linking down here in the description if you want to check it out. I'll just go through it really quickly, but the main focus of the video is working with style components and building the navbar. However, we do need it to create navigation. So I'm going to say yarn add React Router DOM. And the other library that we need is the styled components library. So I'm going to say yarn add styled components like this. And if you're using npm, just write the same thing, but write npm install like this instead of writing yarn add. It is the exact same thing, just change the package manager you're using. So now that we have both of the packages installed, let's start implementing them into our project. The first thing I want to build is the route system, right? So I'm going to be using React Router DOM to implement different routes in my application. And to see everything working, I'm going to say yarn start to start my app. It should open up over here. Hopefully it does. Let me just refresh it. And as you can see, it worked perfectly. So we just see a blank page, but we're going to see a lot more as we start building up our project. So with React Router DOM, we want to implement the route system in our app.js. So I'm just going to say import over here from the top from React Router DOM, and I want to import quite a few stuff. So I'm going to say, first of all, I want to import browser router and change its name to router. Then I want to import the routes component, which is something new. And if you want to check out what it is, again, check out the video that I mentioned. Then I want to import the route component. And finally, I want to import, actually, we'll not import the link component, and you'll see why. Let's just keep them as like this. Then what I want to do is I want to come over here and delete this and just say that when we call the app.js component, I want to return a router. And inside of this router, there'll be a group of routes. And routes needs to be like this. And inside of here, we can define all the routes that we want in our application. For example, I'm thinking as an example, just like we built in the example that I showed you in the beginning of the video, I'm thinking this app will have a route which will be of the path, just an empty slash, which will be called the home component. So just like being the home page, right? Then it will have another route, which would be the products routes. So imagine this is kind of like a store, right? So it'll have the products route, and then we'll have a contact route, and finally an about us route, or about route, like this. In order to make this routes work, we do need to add like a element tag over here, which returns a component, and the component that you put over here will be what will be rendered when you reach this route. For now, let's just see what happens if I don't add anything. You can see that absolutely nothing happens. And it should be fine. I don't want to deal with building different pages, but just know that if you are building multiple pages inside of your project, just add the components that render those pages as a result of the element, and it should be working. I just won't focus on that because it isn't part of the video. What is part of the video though is creating the Navbar. So I want to create a folder over here called components, and here's where we're going to create a component called the Navbar.js component. I'm going to generate this component like this by using a snippet, and I want to import this component over here at the top. So I'm going to say import Navbar from /components/Navbar. And whenever you want to add navbars into a project using React Router DOM, it is important that you add them right over here. So what does that mean? Well, we are basically putting it inside of the router, but outside of the routes, meaning that every single page will include a navbar at the top, and then whatever routes we define at the bottom. And the important thing about putting it inside of the router is that it can use components from React Router DOM, like the link component that allows you to navigate between pages. Again, not the focus of the video, but if you're interested, you can play around with this, and you'll see that if you don't put this inside of the router, it won't show in every single page. I'll just put something like navbar, just a text, so you can see that no matter which page I go, this will always appear. Like if I go to the /about page, it will appear. If I go to the /products page, it will appear as well. And it appears because it is above all of the routes, meaning it will appear in every one of them. So now that we have defined that, we can actually close the app.js and start focusing all of our work in the Navbar component. And the first thing I want to do here is just delete this, because in this component, we'll be using only components generated from the styled components library. So if you're not familiar with styled components, it's a really interesting CSS library. It basically allows you to create components in React that are functional in the sense that if I create, for example, a button, it will have all the functionalities of a button, but they contain their styles already pre-built in them, defined by you. So, for example, if I want to start implementing style components, I'll just come over here and create a folder called styles. This is not necessary, but I like doing that. And if I want to create a style for the navbar, I can create a file called navbar.style.js. So styled components, you won't be creating CSS files. You'll be creating JavaScript files. And the way I like to differentiate them, for example, if I have a style component for the navbar component, I'll just put the same name of the component, navbar, and then .style, and then .js. And that's how I kind of differentiate between them. So over here, we can start implementing all of the stuff related to the styled components library. And it isn't hard at all. All that you have to do is you just have to import something called styled from the styled components package. Then if I want to create a component, for example, I'll create a nav component or like a nav element in HTML, which we're going to be used to create the navbar. We can say something like const navbar. We give it a name to the component. Let's call it navbar container, for example, and set it equal to styled dot the name, the element, the HTML element that you want it to represent. So it can be a link, it can be a button, it can be whatever I want. In our case, we want to create a navbar, so I'm going to call it a nav. And then this is the tricky part. To write the CSS for this, all you have to do is you have to open backticks like this, and then write all of the CSS inside of the backticks. Now it is weird, I know, and for many of you, it will look very ugly in the beginning because you don't have a very important library that I have installed into your VS Code. If you don't have this library, all of the CSS you write will look like as if it was inside of a string. But if you have it, it will give you not only it will not look like a string, but it will also give you autocomplete. For example, like you can see, it's giving me autocomplete for CSS. And the name of the library is the following. Here it is. It's called VS Code Styled Components. It is pretty famous actually, and it is really nice. It will style everything for you and give you autocomplete, which is amazing. So I definitely recommend installing it and checking it out. So you can see that when we start building our components, it will already look like actual CSS code. So what do we write over here? Well, we write the styles that we would write for our CSS. So for example, we're creating a container that will wrap around our whole navbar. And the way I want to do this is I want to just create this one, which will just be a black rectangle that will represent the whole navbar. And inside of it, we'll put all the different stuff that comes with the navbar. So the first thing I want to do is I'm going to give it 100% width. Then for now, I want to give it a height of 80 pixels because I feel like that's a good height for a navbar. Then I'm going to give it a background color and I'm going to make it black because that's the color that I chose, but you can choose it whatever you want. Then I want to make it a display flex and I want to make it flex direction column. And you'll see why. I'm just showing the CSS for this first one. What I'm going to be doing for the next one, since the focus of the video is not writing actual CSS, is building the components and building the navbar. What I will be doing is I'll be creating the components like this, and then I'm going to paste the CSS that I already built. I built it from scratch, and you guys can go over exactly what I wrote so that you guys can get an idea of what I'm doing. But I feel like showing this first one is important so you guys can get an idea of how styled components work. For example, we just built this simple rectangle that should represent the navbar. So how do we display it in our screen? Because right now it's not being displayed, right? Well, the way we do this is, first of all, we need access to this navbar container inside of the navbar.js. So I'll export this like this, and I'll import it here at the top. So import from the file that we created, which will be the inside of the styled folder /navbar.style, and I want to import the navbar container component. And now I just treat this as if it was a component. I'll say I want to wrap everything around with a navbar container, and you should see that the style that we wrote appears in the screen. We can see a black rectangle representing the navbar. Now you might be asking, what is this little margin or padding that appears at the top? Well, as I mentioned in many of my videos, this comes with React. The way to fix this is very simple. All you got to do is come to the app.css or any other global CSS file and just adding a body style and adding a margin of 0 and a padding of 0 as well. And you should see that this disappears. But the important thing is you're seeing that the styles we wrote in our styled components file is working in our component over here. So what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to write the different components we're going to build and then paste the CSS. So the first styled components that I want to create is I want to create a component that will represent the left side of this navbar and the right side of the navbar. Why do I want that? Well, because usually that's how you divide navbars, right? There's one side which includes the links, and there's one side which includes either a search bar or the logo or a button or whatever you want. There might be like a profile, like icon, something like that. But it's usually divided right at the middle, or some sort of clear division between left and right. So what I want to do is I want to create a component called the left container. So I'm gonna say export const left container, and then I'm gonna make this be a div, which will be something we're gonna be using a lot throughout this whole project. Then I'll create another one, which will be the right container, like this, right container. And I'll paste the CSS for them right now and be back in a second. Okay, so as you can see, I just added some very simple CSS. All I did was I divided the left and the right containers, basically 70% to 30. So the left container will be 70% of the navbar, and the right one will be 30% of the navbar. Why did I do this? Because the left one has all of the links, and the right one will just have the logo. So I do think that it requires a lot more space. And I also added for now a background color, just so you guys could see the difference between both of them. So when I come to my navbar.js and I import the left container and the right container, and I put them right next to each other, like this, left, and I also need to close it, and I put the right one, right container, you should see that they have a very clear division, as you can see over here. Now there's a clear issue, right? Which is they're on top of each other, not next to each other. The reason for that is because we need to add some sort of flex direction that determines it to be horizontal instead of vertical. In order to make that happen, I want to point out the following. When we have that functionality where you click on the button to open up like the whole navbar when it's your phone, we're going to create another component called the extended container. We can call it extended container or extended navbar, whatever we want. I think I'm going to call it, let me see, export const, let's call it navbar extended container. So it will be just a div that will appear after we click on the button. And I'll just say style.div and not style it for now, but let's just leave it right over here. Which means that we need some sort of a div that will represent whatever is this inner container, this inner div that will represent the navbar that is not extended. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create another container called the navbar inner container. And by the way, I am aware that this might be confusing, but I do think that, and I remember when I started learning this, I do think that when you get the code and you play around with it, and you just practice a lot of times, you'll definitely start getting it. All I'm doing here is just dividing my divs into a lot of different steps so that we can make it responsive and make it work perfectly. So the thing with the navbar inner container is that it will represent both the left and the right container. It will be a wrapper for both of them, like this. And the extended one will be the one that comes below the navbar inner container. So that's the thing. Instead of having the left and the right container on top of each other, we'll have them obviously next to each other, and the navbar inner container and the navbar extended container on top of each other instead. So I'll also import the navbar inner container, and you can see that now it kind of is not giving that error anymore. However, we do need to style our navbar inner container, and its styling will be very simple. All we want it to be is just a wrapper around the div, around the navbar, right? So I'm just gonna make the width of it 100% of the navbar, and the height of it will always be fixed to 80 pixels. Even when it extends, it will always be fixed to 80 pixels. Then I'll also give it a display flex, not a flex, just a display of flex. And you can see that now it works perfectly. We have a clear division on the navbar between left and the right. But now let's remove the colors because they were only there so you guys could see the division. What we want to do now is we want to start adding the stuff. For example, the links on the left side and the logo on the right side. So for the links, what I want to do is I want to ignore the Navbar extending container for a bit because that will be the last thing we'll be working with. And I just want to create another component called the Navbar, let's call it Navbar link container. It'll just be a div that will contain all the links, right? Will contain all the links. So I'll set it equal to style.div. And over here, it's very simple. All it will have is a display of flex because we want to be able to correctly align all of the links. And then what we want to do is we want to create the links that we're going to add inside of this component. So in our left container over here, I'm going to add the Navbar link container. Now, if you're not familiar with React or DOM, you might not know that when you want to create a link that like navigates between a page to another, you don't use the common A tag like this. You actually use something from React or DOM. This component is called the link component. So I'll import it like this so you guys can see React or DOM. And the way you use the link component is very simple. All you do is you just put you just call the link component. You write a text for the link, like the text home, and it's giving me an error because I haven't added a to property. And this to thing that you add over here is basically the path to where you want to go when you click on this button or in this link. So it's almost like the href for a normal link. And you can see that this should be appearing, although it's very not clear. The link appears over here, and if I click on it, it should bring me to the path that I wrote. But this is how you basically create a link using React or DOM. Now, what we don't want to put this link over here because we want to style it. Now, how on earth can I style a component that isn't built into HTML and style components? Well, it's pretty simple. All I do is, instead of importing this inside of this file, I'll import it in this file over here. And this will work with any components, even components that you create. What you can do is, you can just come to something like create your style component. So I'll say export const and I'll call it the navbar link. So this will be the styling for each link. And instead of saying styled.something, we say styled and we wrap it around with the component that we want to style. So I'm going to wrap it around with the link component, and then we can just put the styling for it perfectly down here. So I'm going to paste the styling for the link and I'll be back in a second. Okay, so this is the style we want. If you want to change it again, you can change it perfectly, but I just made the color white. I used the font size of extra large. The font family was Arial, and I removed all text decorations. And I also put a little margin so that the links were a little bit separated between each other. And you guys will see it in a second, because in order to see this in our project, as you can see, it's giving us an error because we haven't imported stuff. What we need to do is we need to import the navbar link, and then we need to use it instead of the link component. And we can indeed put properties like the to property over here because it is still treated as if it was a link component. The only difference is it has the styling. It's still giving us an error for some reason. Oh, it isn't. I just had to refresh my page. But you can see that the styling appears for us beautifully. And I can add more links by just reusing this styled component. So I'll add two more. I'll add the products one. I'll add the about, actually the contact one. And I'll add the about one, or about us. And this will be contact us as well. And I'll put the different links over here. Products, contact, and about, like this. And as you can see, we should see all the links appearing in our face. I clearly wrote about use instead of about us, but you can see this is working perfectly, right? And we can reuse this as many times as we want, and when we click on one of them, it will actually bring us to the correct path. Now, the next thing we want to do is add the logo over here on the right. I do recommend just adding any logo you want, or if you don't even want to put a logo in your navbar, this is where you put like a button or again a search bar or whatever you want. Again, it's a good practice if you actually don't need a logo and just want to put something different. Just practice what I've been teaching in this video and it should all be fine. What I want to put over here now is a logo. So let me come over here. I'll create a folder called assets, and inside of here, I'm going to add a picture that I have in my computer that you can check out if you check the code in the description. As you can see over here, this is the picture, and in order to use it in our project, I'm going to come over here at the top in my navbar, and I'll just import it into our navbar.js. So I'll import, and I'll call it logo, and I'll import the path towards this picture. So I'll say slash assets slash logo, or logo.png, like this. Then what we need to do is we need to add some styling for the logo. So I'll also, instead of just putting this directly inside of here, I want to create a component over here, and I'll call it logo as well. So I'll say logo is equal to styled, and this is an image tag, so I'll just call the image tag over here. And the styling, I'll just paste it and be back in a second to show you guys. It's very simple, as you can see. It's just a margin of 10 pixels, a max width of 180 pixels, and a height of auto so that we don't screw up the proportion of the picture. Then I want to come to my navbar.js, and I want to import the logo component that we just created. And I realized that we can't have them be the same name, so I'm just going to call this logo image. And then inside of our right container, I'll just add the logo thing that we just created, the logo styled components. And inside of here, I'll just put in a source of the logo so that we can actually display it in our screen. Actually, we need to fix something first. For example, this is called logo right now. However, the problem is that the component is called logo. So it is the same name, so it's not going to work. So we need to change this to something like logo image, and then just put logo image instead of logo over here. So this now should work. And if we save this, you can see that the image now appears as our logo, which is perfect. Now is the time where we start making this responsive, because right now, if I open this and try to put this into a very small screen, you can see that it gets all weird and obviously it doesn't work. So we're gonna start building this so that it becomes responsive. So how exactly are we gonna do this? Well, the first thing I want to do is create the button that is going to appear when we have a small screen. So it's going to replace all of the links. So this button, we'll create it over here as a component, and I'll just call it something like, I don't know, like export const open links button. It will be just a button that when we click on it, it will open up an extended container, this one over here, showing up the links in a small screen. So we'll say this is equal to styled.button, and I'll paste the styles right now and be back. As you can see, the styles are very simple. All we did is just gave it a width of 70 pixels, a height of 50 pixels, no background and no border. The color of the text will be white and the font size will be 45. Right now we can't literally see anything because we haven't imported yet, and also because what I'm gonna use is a Unicode to give to make it have that little 3 lines, the hamburger like lines, as its text. So we want to import this over here at the top by saying open links button. Then I want to come over here and I want to put it next to the navbar links right over here. And obviously when the screen is not small, we don't want to display it, but we'll deal with that in a second. I just want to say open links button, and the text inside of it will be this Unicode over here, which as you can see will represent the 3 lines that I was mentioning. So right now it doesn't do anything if I click on it, absolutely anything, but it does look good, which is very important. So what I want to do now is I want to add the functionality so that when the screen is small, this will disappear. No, the button will appear and the links will disappear. To do that, all we want to do is come over here and go to the button and just add a media query to it. So the media query we want to add for the button specifically is one that says that whenever the width is above 700 pixels, so the width of the screen is above 700 pixels, we don't want to display it, meaning that any screens that are bigger than 700 pixels, we want to display the links instead of the button. So the way we add media queries in style components is by just adding them inside of the styling for its specific element. So I'll just say at media, then I'll say min width and say 700 pixels, saying that when we're dealing with 700 pixels screen, I just want to display none, meaning we want to hide the button. And you can see that the button doesn't appear anymore because the screen is pretty big. But then we want to, when I come over here to a small screen that is less than 700, you see the button appears, but I want to remove the links from the Navbar. So to do that, we're going to come over here. And to do that, we're going to come over here to our Navbar links and basically just add a media query over here as well. I'll just copy it from here. But it will basically be the opposite. Instead of being when it's at least 700 pixels, we want to say this will be at max 700 pixels. And if it reaches this point, we want to remove it from the screen. So as you can see, now it disappears. But if it's more than 700, the links appear, but the button disappear. This is very common practice in a lot of projects. It's just dealing with the screen size and making the website respond to it based on that. So this is looking pretty good, but when I click on the button, again, nothing happens. In order to make something happen, we need to take into account that we want to use that extended Navbar container that we created to fill up the whole screen when we click on the button. So what I want to do is the following. I want to start by adding the functionality of even clicking on the button. So in order to recognize when the user clicks on the button or not, obviously we'll have to use the useState hook from React to create a state that is going to represent the state of the button. So I'm going to create over here a state called, I'll just make it useState, and it will be a Boolean. So we'll initiate it as false, but the name of the state will be something like extend navbar. And the function that mutates it is set extend navbar. So what this represents is if it's true, then first of all, the little button over here that we have will not be this hamburger, it will be an X, and the navbar will be extended. If it's false, then it will be this button and it will look exactly how it's looking right now, right? So it's just representing the state of the button. And what we want to do is I want to come over here, and when I click on the button, I'll give this property to the open links button. We'll give it an on click and say that whenever you click on this button, we want to set the extended navbar to be equal to the opposite of what it is right now. So if it is open, I want to close it, and if it is closed, I want to open. And the way we do this is we grab the current value and we set it to be equal to the opposite of that value. So like this, we'll just set the extended navbar to be the opposite of what it is right now. And right now there's no way for us to check if it's working, but it is actually working. As I click on this button, it is altering the value of that state. But one clear way that we can see the difference is by changing the text inside of this button to have different Unicodes based on if the extended navbar is like the state is true or false. So if it is true, then we want to display the X Unicode, which isn't here. And if it's false, we want to display this one over here. So what we can do is we can say extended navbar. If it's true, then I want to display the X one, which I just pasted over here. And if it's false, I want to display the hamburger one that we have in our screen, which is this one over here. Now, the reason why I'm adding this little tags next to it is because if I don't, for some reason, it will act as if it's JavaScript, and it will give us this error. I actually never had to deal with this before, but this is a fix that I found, and I just find it really easy to deal it like this. So you can see that if we go over here, if it's true, it will be an X, and if it's false, it will be the hamburger. You can keep clicking on it, and it will keep altering based on the state, which is perfect. But this doesn't mean anything. We want to extend the navbar and show the links down here if this is true, and remove it if it's false. So the way we're going to do this is we're going to come over here, and remember the navbar extend container? Well, it must include all of the links as well, right? Because it will be that little black div that appears at the bottom with the links. So the links that we have right now over here, we need to add them as well below in that div. So I'll just copy all of the links and paste them over here. Now you might be seeing an issue with that because now all of the links are appearing in our screen without even without even wanting them to see them, right? They're over here. They're not seeing them because they're white. But if I'm clicking on them, you can see that I'm moving throughout my nav, right? My navigation. Well, the way we do this is we only want to display the navbar extend container if the extend navbar state is true. So only if we click on the button to open it, we want to display this. So I'll say only if extend navbar is true, then I want to show this. And right now the buttons are not here anymore. You can see that if I click on this, we're not moving in our paths. But we need to add the styling for this finally, so that you guys can actually see it occurring in our screen. So the first thing we want to So I'll be back in a second when we add the styling for the extended navbar. Well, as you can see, all I did was I just added a display flex, some flex direction to be column, and you guys will see why in a second. And also added a media query saying that we will remove it if it is bigger, if the screen is bigger than 700 pixels. And you guys will also see in a second why this is necessary. But one thing that we need to do right now to finalize the fact that if I click on this, something appears in our over here, is we need to alter the height of our navbar container to fit in the extended container when we click on the button. Right now it's fixed at 80 pixels, so we will never fill up the whole screen. So the way we can do this is by actually adding props to styled components, which is something really interesting. So for example, if I want to style this height based on some sort of prop or some sort of state that is in this component over here, for example, the extended navbar state, what we can do is we can add a property or prop to the navbar container and just call it something like extend navbar, right? And set it equal to some sort of state, which in our case will be the extend navbar state. And then over here at the bottom, when we come to our navbar, to our styled component, we can just say, well, grab all the props that we're passing to this component by creating a function and saying props, and then just say, well, if the props.extend navbar is equal to true, then I want to make this, the height of this be 100% of the screen. Or you can also use 100 VH, which means 100% of the current computer screen that you're using in a vertical direction. It's a bit complicated, but this is basically what we mean by that. And else, if it's not true, then just make it 80 pixels as it was before. And all it's going to do is it's going to look for the prop that we pass in this component over here, see the value of it, and based on that, it will make the decision of what the height should be. So this is how you put props in styled components, and it is really cool, but it does look a little bit ugly and confusing, but it's very simple if you just understand how props work in React. And you can see that if I click on the button to open and close, now the screen is becoming completely black based on if I'm clicking on them or not. But we're not seeing the links on them. And you might be finding it weird because we did put all of the links inside of here. As you can see, we put all of the links inside of the extended container, but they're not appearing. Well, the reason for that is because the screen currently is less than 700 pixels. And as you can see, the thing disappears if it is less than 700 pixels. And we're using the same styled component for both this one and the extended one. And in the original one, as you can see, I'm adding a media query saying to like hide the links when the screen is less than 700 pixels. So what I want to do is I just want to create another style components for the link and call it Navbar link extended, and remove this thing over here because it won't be at all valid for the extended version of the Navbar link, and use this instead of the other one over here. No, actually not here, as the links. Sorry about that. We'll just paste it on all the links, and it should work now. But we also need to import it over here. You should see that now the links appear in our screen. I'll put a common screen size like the iPhone X, and you can see that all the links appear perfectly, and it looks really nice. And I can close this, and it works really cool. One thing you should be noticing is the fact that if, for example, I open this and I open the screen, well, it's still all black. How do I fix that? Well, the reason for that is because we still need to add some media queries to handle this kind of cases. So I'll add all of the rest of the CSS, which isn't a lot, and I'll be back in a second. Okay, everyone, so the only media query I actually added was this one over here, which basically says that no matter what, if the screen size is less than 700 or it's more than 700, the height should always be fixed to 80 pixels. So this issue that we just dealt with will not be occurring. So if I close this and get very small, you can see that even if it is already turned on, like we set it to true to extend, it will not show as we open up our screen. But as we change between having an iPhone X and just having a website, a normal website, you can see that the screen changes accordingly to it. So I'll click on this, then go to website on a computer, and it doesn't open up like before. But when I go back to a phone, it works up as it did before. So this is basically it for the Navbar. Again, I mentioned the code will all be in the description if you want to check it out. And also, don't worry if it's a bit confusing, especially using this handmade and custom-made components from Style Components. I do recommend you taking a look at the library before so you can kind of get an idea of how it works. And also the CSS, don't worry if you got confused because of the CSS. CSS is barely usable, in my opinion, nowadays, because the fact that a lot of the CSS is already online, and just knowing the basics to an intermediate level of CSS is already enough for most developers out there. So if you're interested in just looking at the CSS, and again, it will be in the description. And with that in mind, I really appreciate you guys watching this video. If you enjoyed it, please leave a like down below and comment what you want to see next. Subscribe because I'm posting 2 times a week, and I'll massively appreciate it. I wanted to apologize if in this video my voice is kind of weird. It's because I kind of have a sore throat and it was really hard to record this video. But I really hope that it ended up good and that you guys could get some value out of it. So if you guys enjoyed it, leave a like, and I see you guys next time.